Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed, no matter how complex the topic. Today we're taking a deep dive into the Daily Intelligence Brief for Thursday, July 17th, 2025. Now, this incredibly detailed report comes to us from Nexsight. They're a leading intelligence company really focused on global insights. And they develop their own open-source intelligence platforms, to help investigators globally. If you're as fascinated by these deep dives as we are and want to explore the kind of in-depth analysis we're about to unpack, well, you can check out more of their work and services at www.next-site.com. They even customize these intelligence reports to fit specific interests, giving you exactly what you need.
Indeed, it's a remarkable compilation. Really gives you a panoramic view of a world in constant motion. We're seeing everything from escalating trade tensions, geopolitical conflicts, to significant domestic events, and even natural disasters.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack this mountain of information, pull out the most important nuggets, and help you connect the dots. It paints a picture of a truly interconnected world, doesn't it? Where actions in one corner have these ripple effects far and wide, sometimes in ways that aren't immediately obvious. We're going to explore how some of these seemingly separate events might actually be, well, part of a larger strategy. Let's jump in. We're certainly seeing a lot of turbulence across the globe in this brief. What's the overarching theme you're noticing right out of the gate?
Well, if we try and connect this to the bigger picture, what stands out immediately is this pervasive theme of volatility. Political, economic, even environmental volatility. We're witnessing, a deepening of trade wars, internal political crises heating up, regional conflicts. And these often aren't isolated incidents. They seem exacerbated by underlying economic pressures or maybe even deployed as tools within a broader strategy.
That makes sense. Okay, let's start close to home then, in North America. There were some truly surprising political stories here. First up, the Trump administration is facing a pretty significant Republican backlash over the Epstein files. President Trump publicly criticized his own supporters, calling them stupid people and weaklings for demanding the release of these files. And the administration is even claiming the files are part of a Democratic hoax. That seems like an unprecedented division within the MAGA base.
Mm-hmm. What's fascinating here isn't just the explicit calling out of his own base. It's the deeper political calculation perhaps at play. It highlights the immense pressure for transparency around these files, right? And the administration's defensive posture. Well, that could fundamentally impact not just Trump's political fundraising base, but also trust within his core supporters. It could really reshape things.
And then we have this controversial firing of 17 immigration judges across 10 states. Union representatives sharply criticized this, but the official line was just an administrative decision for policy alignment.
Right. And this raises an important question about the efficiency, maybe even the impartiality of the justice system. I mean, these firings add to an existing 3.5 million case backlog, sure, but maybe more critically. They suggest a broader governmental effort to align judicial outcomes with executive policy. That could have long-term implications for judicial independence,
Okay, shifting to trade. U.S.-Canada tensions are escalating. Canadian PM Mark Carney announced new steel tariffs to protect against U.S. measures, specifically to safeguard, over 23,000 steel jobs and billions in industry revenue.
Yeah, these tariff countermeasures from Canada signal a defensive posture, almost combative, really. It indicates no favorable deal has been reached yet, and, well, both sides seem willing to absorb significant economic pain. You might even see this as a micro example of the larger economic warfare we'll probably discuss later, where trade policy becomes a weapon.
And inflation concerns are definitely rising across the U.S. Consumer prices increasing month on month, primarily due to these tariff impacts and other economic policies.
Well, that's a direct consequence, isn't it? Tariffs increase the cost of imported goods. That feeds directly into consumer prices. You couple that with other fiscal and monetary policies, and you get this volatile economic environment that hits everyday Americans and fuels public anxiety.
On the domestic front, we saw a massive tornado outbreak strike the Midwest, Wisconsin, and Illinois specifically. Estimated damages in the millions and anticipated agricultural losses, too.
Beyond the immediate human cost, what's striking there is how these events, even localized ones, can ripple through global supply chains, especially for agricultural goods. The impact on crop yields in a major region like the Midwest can drive up food prices, nationally and internationally. Adds to that broader economic volatility.
Alaska was also hit. A powerful 7.3 magnitude earthquake off its coast triggered tsunami warnings, emergency responses. And then there's this incident that really makes you scratch your head. Capitol Police arrested a heavily armed individual near the U.S. Capitol, carrying an assault rifle, a sword, a bow and arrow. even a medieval hatchet.
It's bizarre. It underscores the ongoing security challenges around critical government infrastructure, obviously. But it also highlights the strange, sometimes unpredictable nature of threats, doesn't it? Mixing modern weaponry with archaic tools suggests a complex, maybe fragmented ideological landscape behind actions like that.
Perhaps the most unusual North American story, though, is the Canadian aircraft hijacking in Vancouver. A 39-year-old pilot, Shahir Kassoum, allegedly hijacked a small aircraft. His motivation, citing climate change, caused 80 flight delays, 9 diversions at Vancouver International.
Yeah, that's a stark example. Shows how deeply entrenched social and environmental issues can manifest in extreme disruptive ways, spilling over into criminal acts. And this specific motivation, climate change activism expressed through hijacking it, raises new questions, right? About how authorities need to prepare for and respond to politically or ideologically motivated disruption. It's far beyond traditional terrorism.
Okay, let's move across the Atlantic to Europe. Defense, diplomacy, and domestic woes seem to be really at the forefront there. The European Commission unveiled a massive $2 trillion budget proposal for 2028-2034, with a 5-fold increase in defense spending, $131 billion total for defense and space. That's a significant shift.
Oh, absolutely. This budget restructuring is a direct response to rising geopolitical threats, increased competition. It signals Europe's intent to bolster its own strategic autonomy, to reduce reliance on external defense guarantees, especially with all the global uncertainty. It's like Europe deciding to stand on its own 2 feet, militarily speaking.
But efforts to unify against Russia faced a setback. The EU failed to approve a new sanctions package. Slovak opposition over gas supply concerns was the reason.
Yes. While challenging, the Slovak opposition highlights a recurring tension within the EU, doesn't it? That struggle to balance collective security goals with individual member states of vital economic dependencies, especially energy. It's a playbook Russia often tries to exploit, you know?
Yeah.
Foster divisions, weaken a unified European front.
Meanwhile, the EU-US trade crisis is deepening. EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic is traveling to Washington for emergency tariff negotiations. Trump threatened 30% tariffs on EU goods. And the potential EU retaliation could amount to, $772 billion. Huge numbers.
Huge. This really highlights the desperate diplomatic efforts underway to prevent a catastrophic trade war. Such a conflict would have immense global financial repercussions, disrupting supply chains, hiking consumer costs, potentially triggering a global recession. This is clearly a high-stakes negotiation, economic leverage being used for political objectives.
In response, France is leading a coalition of EU states to deploy an anti-coercion instrument against potential U.S. tariffs.
Okay.
They're considering targeted taxes on U.S. tech giants, investment curbs.
Right, this anti-coercion instrument. It's essentially a new legal tool the EU has developed specifically to respond to economic threats from third countries. By targeting U.S. tech giants, the EU is signaling it's willing to hit where it hurts, leveraging its significant market power in the digital economy to counter what it sees as trade bullying. It's a bold move, escalates the economic tensions further.
Amidst all this, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz made his first official visit to London, signed a comprehensive friendship treaty with the UK, aiming to strengthen European cooperation against threats.
That's a significant post-Brexit realignment, isn't it? Despite the broader EU-UK tensions, this bilateral treaty signals a shared recognition of external threats, a desire for pragmatic cooperation. It's a move to ensure European stability, even as the larger EU-US relationship remains, strained.
Then in the UK, they're grappling with a major Afghan data breach scandal, exposed thousands of interpreters' information. It's led to a political crisis with hundreds of millions in secret root costs implicated.
That reveals systemic failures in data protection right in the middle of a sensitive government operation, poses significant security risks for vulnerable allies whose lives depend on that confidentiality. It also raises serious questions about accountability and oversight, especially when you have secret costs involved in government projects.
On the political front, UK PM Keir Starmer suspended 4 Labour MPs for voting against welfare cuts, demonstrating party authority but impacting political stability.
Yeah, that move by Starmer signals a firm hand within the Labour Party, trying to enforce discipline, a unified message, even if it means internal dissent. It really highlights the ideological fault lines within the party and the challenges of leading a cohesive opposition during times of economic austerity.
And overall, European markets closed lower, reflecting all this global uncertainty over U.S. tariff policies, inflation concerns, resulting in billions in market value losses.
That's the immediate financial barometer, isn't it, of the current geopolitical climate. Market losses directly reflect investor confidence, or the lack of it, in the stability of international trade. Shows how fast political decisions translate into tangible economic impacts across continents.
Right. Okay, let's head over to the Asia Pacific. Trade and security concerns are paramount there, and the dynamics are incredibly complex. China-U.S. trade tensions remain high. Even as NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang praised China's AI advances and announced resumed H20 chip sales following U.S. government approval. Apparently, NVIDIA faced Q1 losses of $2 billion, with a projected $8 billion Q2 impact due to earlier restrictions. That's quite a hit.
It is, and this is a crucial development in the tech and trade landscape. You see, while the U.S. aims to restrict China's access to advanced chips for national security reasons, NVIDIA's significant losses clearly put pressure on that policy. The H20 chip approval suggests a delicate balance in negotiations. A recognition, maybe, that a complete decoupling in critical tech sectors is economically painful for both sides. While still trying to maintain some strategic control, it's a clear example of technology dominance perhaps being one of those hidden agendas in economic warfare.
Meanwhile, Indonesia reached a trade agreement with the U.S., reducing tariffs from 32% down to 19%, while also purchasing 50 Boeing jets. Signals an expansion of their economic partnership.
That deal is significant for regional power dynamics. It shows the U.S. actively seeking to diversify trade relationships, secure allies in the Asia-Pacific, potentially as a counterbalance to China's growing influence. It's a strategic economic partnership, goes beyond just simple trade figures.
Japan's political crisis seems to be deepening. PM Shigeru Ishiba is facing a potential coalition majority loss in upcoming upper house elections, all amidst economic challenges.
Yes, and this political instability in Japan could lead to significant fiscal policy changes, including crucial sales tax implications that directly affect the Japanese public. It also raises questions about Japan's ability to maintain a consistent foreign policy, especially given the rising regional security threats we're seeing.
And in a concerning bilateral development, a Chinese court sentenced a Japanese pharmaceutical company employee to 3.5 years for espionage. That's straining relations.
That incident is more than just a legal case. It's a clear diplomatic pressure point. It signals Beijing's zero-tolerance stance on perceived espionage, and it will undoubtedly worsen existing tensions. It also impacts business confidence for foreign companies operating in China.
Japan's defense ministry also released its white paper, identifying China, North Korea, and Russia as its greatest security threats since World War II.
Right. And this annual assessment isn't just a statement. It directly impacts defense budget implications. It justifies significant military spending increases for Japan. It reflects a growing sense of urgency, a shift in Japan's traditionally more pacifist defense posture, moving towards a more robust military role in the region.
And Taiwan's upcoming elections, posing significant questions about cross-strait relations, broader U.S.-China tensions, huge implications for regional stability.
Oh, absolutely. Taiwan's elections are always a critical barometer for cross-strait relations. The outcome directly influences Beijing's approach to reunification and Washington's commitment to Taiwan's defense, creates a potential flashpoint for broader U.S.-China confrontations, and by extension, global economic stability, especially given Taiwan's central role in the global tech supply chain.
Despite deflationary pressures, though, international banks like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs upgraded China's growth outlook to around 5%, following better-than-expected Q2 data.
That is a positive sign for the global economy, given China's role as a major growth engine. The upgrade suggests that despite internal challenges like deflation, Beijing's economic stimulus measures might be having some effect, or maybe export performance is stronger than anticipated.
And on a lighter note, Japan defeated South Korea 1-0 in the East Asian E1 Football Championship final, marking their second consecutive title. A moment of national pride amidst all the tensions, I suppose.
A small win, yes.
Okay, moving to the Middle East, a region continually grappling with conflict, complex diplomatic efforts. This brief really shows a clear connection between military actions and their broader implications. Israel conducted major airstrikes on Damascus, targeting Syrian military headquarters and the presidential palace area. Specifically, the report says, to protect Druze minorities.
Yes, these precision strikes highlight Israel's proactive and often controversial stance in protecting ethnic groups in neighboring territories. While the stated goal is protection, such actions carry significant military costs and can further destabilize an already volatile region. And the timing of these strikes, as the report might suggest later, could also correlate with energy market movements, hinting at resource control as a possible hidden agenda.
And this was swiftly followed by a Syria-Israel ceasefire, declared after the Israeli strikes forced a Syrian military withdrawal from Druze areas, negotiated under pressure from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
The rapid succession of strike and ceasefire underscores the immense pressure from international actors, particularly the U.S., to de-escalate. It shows a fragile peace, heavily dependent on external mediation, and the immediate impact of military action used to achieve specific short-term objectives.
Unfortunately, Gaza hostage negotiations remain stalled, despite President Trump meeting with Qatar's prime minister. Apparently, it's primarily over the scope of IDF withdrawal.
Right. And this ongoing diplomatic impasse means humanitarian aid commitments, desperately needed reconstruction funding for Gaza. It all remains uncertain. The core sticking point, the scope of IDF withdrawal, reviews this deep chasm in trust and strategic objectives between the parties, prolonging the suffering.
And the humanitarian crisis in Gaza was tragically underscored by a deadly crowd crush during aid distribution, killing at least 30 Palestinians.
Just heartbreaking. That incident highlights the extreme desperation on the ground and the systemic challenges of aid delivery in a war zone. It's a stark reminder that the human cost of conflict extends far beyond direct combat.
Israeli airstrikes also targeted Lebanese Hezbollah's elite Radwan forces in the Bekaa Valley, killing 12 members. An effort to prevent Hezbollah rebuilding, the report suggests.
These strikes target a specific, highly trained unit of Hezbollah, indicates a strategic effort to degrade their capabilities, prevent them from becoming a more significant threat on Israel's northern border. It's a preemptive move, really, to reshape the military balance in the region.
There's also mounting pressure on Iran regarding its nuclear program. The U.S. and European partners reportedly setting an end-August deadline for a nuclear agreement before triggering snapback sanctions.
That's a critical deadline. It has significant implications for energy markets, particularly global oil prices. Failure to reach a deal would likely see a return of crippling sanctions, hitting Iran's oil exports, potentially disrupting global supply. It's also a high-stakes moment for non-proliferation efforts, trying to prevent Iran developing nuclear weapons.
And Iraq saw drone attacks targeting multiple oil fields in Iraqi Kurdistan, disrupting production, raising security concerns, attributed to Iranian-backed militias.
That's a clear example of supply chain weaponization, isn't it? Using non-state actors to disrupt critical energy infrastructure. It's a tactic that served to destabilize the region, demonstrate influence, and potentially impact global energy prices. Ties right into that broader economic warfare narrative.
Domestically, the Israeli government faces a coalition crisis. The Shah's party quit PM Netanyahu's government over the controversial Haredi draft bill, threatening political stability.
Yes, the Haredi draft bill. That refers to legislation about potentially conscripting ultra-Orthodox Jews into the military, a hugely divisive issue in Israel. Shah's, a religious party, leaving the coalition signals a profound internal split. Could lead to the collapse of Netanyahu's government, more political instability in an already turbulent time.
Okay, now let's turn our attention to Africa, a continent facing severe security challenges, but also significant economic shifts. In Nigeria, gunmen killed at least 30 people in Plateau State attacks, the death toll rising as more bodies were discovered, attributed to escalating farmer-herder conflicts.
Just tragic. It underscores the pervasive security challenges in Nigeria, rooted in these long-standing communal conflicts, often exacerbated by environmental pressures like desertification, competition over resources. It highlights the state's struggle to provide basic security and justice, leading to ongoing humanitarian crises.
And Ethiopian authorities arrested 82 suspected ISIS militants trained in Somalia, preventing terrorist operations through surveillance and intelligence.
That's a significant counterterrorism success. Demonstrates the critical role of regional intelligence cooperation in preventing larger attacks. Also highlights the continued threat of extremist groups operating across borders in the Horn of Africa.
South Africa-U.S. relations are in crisis. President Trump's 30% tariff threat on South Africa potentially costing 100,000 jobs, while a special envoy remains sidelined.
Yeah, this tariff threat targets South Africa's export-dependent industries. The potential impact on employment is devastating. And the sidelining of diplomatic efforts indicates a breakdown in communication, a lack of willingness to negotiate, shows how quickly economic pressure can escalate into a diplomatic crisis.
In another unusual development, the U.S. deported 5 convicted criminals to Eswatini under a secretive third-country deportation program, because their home countries refuse to accept them.
That third country deportation program is certainly unusual, raises questions about international legal norms, the sovereignty of nations. The secrecy around it suggests some sensitive diplomatic maneuvering to manage complex immigration and criminal justice issues.
In Nigerian politics, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar resigned from the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, citing departures from principle. Could have significant political realignment implications.
This high-profile departure signals potential shifts in the political landscape ahead of future elections. When a prominent figure like Atiku cites departures from principle, it often reflects deeper ideological divides or power struggles within a major party. Could lead to new alliances or fragmentations.
South Africa is also facing a police minister crisis. President Ramaphosa appointed an acting minister after corruption allegations against Senzo Mchunu.
Right. This reflects ongoing challenges with governance and corruption within South Africa. While appointing an acting minister is a stopgap, the underlying corruption allegations keep eroding public trust in institutions, can destabilize key government functions, like law enforcement.
Angola saw hundreds protest rising fuel costs in Luanda. Increases from about 33 cents to 44 cents per liter, met with police tear gas and arrests.
A classic example of economic hardship directly fueling social unrest, isn't it? Even seemingly small price increases for essential goods like fuel can significantly impact daily lives, leads to widespread protests, a forceful government response, highlights the fragility of social contracts under economic pressure.
On a positive note, Aliko Dangote's conglomerate submitted plans for Nigeria's biggest seaport in Ogun State, a multi-billion-dollar investment set to expand export capacity.
That's a crucial infrastructure development for Nigeria and the wider West African region. Expanding export capacity through such a large-scale project can significantly boost economic growth, create jobs, improve trade efficiency. Provides a much-needed counterbalance to some of the security and economic challenges.
Okay, finally, let's move to Latin America, where trade wars and political dynamics are creating a complex picture, again showing economic pressure points being used for strategic influence. The Brazil-U.S. trade war is escalating. The U.S. launched a Section 301 investigation into Brazil's unfair trade practices, threatening 50% tariffs, and it's specifically linked to the Bolsonaro prosecution. This impacts a $68 billion trade relationship.
Wow. That's a powerful demonstration, isn't it, of how economic pressure, specifically a Section 301 investigation which allows the U.S. president to impose tariffs, is being directly applied to influence domestic judicial processes in another country. The explicit link to the Bolsonaro prosecution suggests a clear political objective behind the economic threats, really highlights political influence as a key component of this economic warfare idea.
And in response, Brazil formally proposed trade negotiations with the U.S. after meetings with its steel, aluminum, and other industry sectors, hoping to prevent these devastating tariffs.
Brazil's immediate move to negotiate just underscores the severe economic consequences these tariffs would have on its key industries. It shows a desperate attempt to mitigate the damage, negotiate a way out of a conflict that seems driven by more than just trade imbalances.
Interestingly, Brazilian President Lula's approval rating rose for the first time in 2025, reaching 43%. They're calling it a rally around the flag effect amidst the U.S. tariff threats.
Ah, the rally around the flag effect. It's a common phenomenon. In times of external threat or crisis, public support for the national leader temporarily increases regardless of their prior ratings. Here, the U.S. tariff threat is seen as external aggression, allowing Lula to consolidate domestic support.
Brazil's Supreme Court also upheld most of Lula's controversial tax increase decree, boosting government revenue by a projected $12 billion raise.
That court decision is a significant boost for Lula's economic agenda, providing much-needed government revenue. However, such tax increases can be politically unpopular, potentially impact economic growth depending on how they're implemented and perceived.
In Colombia, the government is considering a tax reform proposal to raise 26 trillion pesos, about $6.48 billion, for the 2026 budget.
That signals Colombia's efforts to shore up its national budget, fund government programs. The size of the proposed increase suggests significant fiscal needs. But tax reforms, as we know, can often be politically contentious, face strong opposition.
In Cuba, the labor minister, Marta Elena Feido Cabrera, resigned. After controversial comments denying the existence of beggars, it forced an acknowledgement of economic realities.
That resignation, particularly over comments that directly contradict visible economic realities, is highly symbolic. It suggests internal pressure within the Cuban government to acknowledge and address the country's economic hardships, which are often downplayed in official narratives. Quite a shift.
Peru saw violent protests against President Dina Boluarte's visit to Iquitos, injuring 17 people, reflecting ongoing government unpopularity.
Yeah, these protests underscore the deep-seated political unrest, public dissatisfaction with President Boluarte's government. The violence indicates a continued breakdown in the relationship between the state and its citizens, often fueled by economic grievances and demands for political change.
And in Argentina, a U.S. appeals court temporarily suspended an order for Argentina to hand over a 51% stake in the YPF Energy Company, providing some legal relief from asset seizure.
That temporary suspension offers crucial legal relief for Argentina, preventing a significant asset seizure of its state-owned energy company, YPF. It's a complex legal battle, massive financial implications for the Argentine economy. This ruling provides a critical, albeit temporary, reprieve.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Throughout our conversation, we've touched on several threads the report bundles under economic warfare analysis. It talks about systematic coordination between military actions and financial markets.
Yes. What's fascinating here is the report's assertion that trade wars aren't just about tariffs. They're being used as a weapon. We saw this with Trump's tariff threats directly correlating with geopolitical objectives, like influencing Brazil's domestic policies or pressuring the EU. It's about using economic might to achieve non-economic goals.
So it's not just about trade deficits, but about a broader strategic agenda then.
Exactly. The report identifies market manipulation, where the strategic timing of military actions like those Israel-Syria strikes we discussed coincides with energy market volatility, or gains in the defense sector. This isn't presented as accidental. It suggests a deliberate coordination between military and financial interests to achieve specific outcomes, whether that's resource control or creating market opportunities.
And it even mentions currency warfare. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, the proposed 10% BRICS tariff, for example, is specifically highlighted in the report as targeting dollar alternatives, indicating a broader strategy of, well, protecting the financial system, the dollar's dominance, through trade mechanisms. It's about maintaining dollar supremacy, preventing de-dollarization. And this extends to supply chain disruption, too, seen in coordinated actions like the Middle East oil field attacks in Iraq or the Asia-Pacific chip restrictions affecting NVIDIA. These are multi-vector economic warfare tactics, hitting different economic levers simultaneously.
And this all points to something larger, what the report labels hidden agendas identified. What are these underlying motivations driving these actions, according to the report?
Right, this raises the important question. If these are strategies, what are the ultimate goals? The report suggests several possibilities. Resource control, particularly through military actions in the Middle East, correlating with energy price manipulation. Technology dominance, where chip restrictions serve both economic and strategic goals to curb competitors. Dollar supremacy, with trade policies designed to prevent global de-dollarization. And political influence, using economic pressure to sway domestic judicial processes, like we saw potentially with Brazil. It paints a picture of a very comprehensive approach to global power.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. How are people reacting to all this on the ground? Or maybe more accurately, online? The report includes this fascinating people's hearsay section, analyzing social media trends.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the social media analysis offers a direct pulse of public sentiment. It confirms many of these underlying tensions we've been talking about. For July 16th, 2025, the top trending topics included, well, Shane Gillis, Lady Gaga T-pop, ESPY's coverage, but alongside those, political hashtags showing significant division. What's crucial is how these general trends play out in the regional specifics.
And the reactions were very specific to each region, directly tying into the news we've been discussing.
Absolutely. In North America, users expressed significant concern over the Trump-Republican split. Hashtag Epstein Files was trending alongside criticism of administration transparency. In Europe, strong social media backlash against the EU budget proposals. Farmers' protests generated significant online engagement reflecting those economic anxieties.
What about Asia-Pacific and the Middle East?
Chinese social media celebrated the NVIDIA chip deal resumption, saw it as an economic win. Meanwhile, Japanese users worried about election implications, how political instability might affect their daily lives. The Middle East saw intense social media coverage of the Israel-Syria strikes, competing narratives about civilian casualties versus military objectives, reflecting deep partisan divides.
And Africa and Latin America.
Nigerian Twitter was dominated by political discussions about Atiku's PDP departure, shows how engaged the public is with shifts in political leadership there. South African users vigorously protested U.S. tariff threats, mobilizing online to express economic grievances. In Latin America, Brazilian social media showed strong anti-Trump sentiment, protest organization hashtags trending, and Cuban users openly discussed economic realities, which, as we noted, is a significant shift in a state-controlled media environment.
So what key patterns emerge from all this online chatter? It sounds like more than just isolated opinions floating around.
The report identifies 5 key public opinion patterns from this data analysis. First, anti-establishment sentiment is clearly rising globally. Second, economic anxiety is dominating domestic political discussions across continents. Third, there's widespread skepticism toward official narratives, particularly regarding military actions and government explanations. Fourth, we're seeing visible grassroots mobilization, protest organization happening across multiple countries, often empowered by social media. And finally, increasing polarization between pro-government and opposition voices, making consensus much harder to achieve.
So what does this all mean for us, for you listening, trying to make sense of this increasingly fragmented world? The intelligence assessment concludes with some critical key vulnerabilities identified.
This raises an important question. How do these global shifts impact stability and the systems we rely on? The report highlights that democratic institutions are under immense pressure, not just from internal dissent, but from economic coercion being applied by powerful external actors. Simultaneously, international law seems to be eroding through unilateral trade actions, military interventions that often bypass traditional diplomatic frameworks.
It sounds like a domino effect across various systems we kind of thought were stable.
Precisely. They also point to supply chain weaponization, where critical goods and trade routes become targets, creating systemic risks for global commerce and national security. And critically, alliance structures seem to be weakening under economic pressure as nations prioritize their own economic interests, sometimes at the expense of long-standing partnerships. These are critical areas demanding vigilant attention.
Given all this, what does the report specifically recommend we keep a close eye on? What are the vital signs we should be watching?
Well, the recommended monitoring areas are pretty clear. Energy market volatility and its precise correlation with military actions suggests that strategic manipulation we discussed. Also, the currency market impacts of trade war escalation, which can quickly spill over into broader financial instability. We must also monitor the stability of democratic institutions under this economic pressure as external forces seek to influence internal politics. And crucially, monitor social media manipulation and public opinion formation, as these are increasingly weaponized tools in this new era of economic warfare.
Wow, what an incredibly comprehensive deep dive. We've unpacked everything from a mysterious armed suspect near the Capitol to these intricate layers of global economic warfare and the unfiltered reactions on social media. It truly underscores how interconnected our world is, doesn't it? How quickly events in one region can impact another, often through these hidden threads.
Understanding these complex dynamics is really key to navigating our rapidly changing world. Each piece of information, from that small aircraft hijacking to a multi-trillion euro budget, it contributes to a larger tapestry of global events, reveals patterns you might otherwise miss.
So what's one provocative thought for you to mull over after today's deep dive? Consider this. If military actions, financial markets, and public sentiment are all increasingly coordinated and weaponized as tools of economic warfare, how does this fundamentally reshape our understanding of international relations? And what does it mean for the future of global stability in a world where conflict might look less like tanks and more like tariffs and tweets? This intelligence brief for Thursday, July 17, 2025, was powered by the fantastic team at NextSight. Remember, they're an intelligence company focusing on global insights and open-source intelligence platforms helping investigators globally. You can find out more about their detailed and customizable reports at www.next-sight.com. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep connecting those dots.